We interrupt this program to bring you news bulletins from Washington, D.C. All of the wires have sent us the account. The President of the United States has been killed in the White House, along with the Secretary of State and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. There are other bulletins that tell us that people are being herded into the streets of the large cities and machine gunned down like cattle. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the communist takeover of the United States. This is the end of democracy, as you and I know it.
Welcome back to Boys Bible Study. Podcasters of the world unite. Am I right, boys?
Yeah.
Of course.
We have nothing to lose but our Patreon subscribers.
That's right. As always, I'm Ash. I'm here with
Scott, Comrade Scott.
And Comrade Julian. Happy to bring you a free episode.
Yes.
As it should be.
I agree. I think that there's no reason that these episodes can't be provided to each according to his need.
Yeah. No matter how little you worked, you still get your little podcast here.
That's fair to me. But, a problem I keep having is have you noticed that we're not really innovating anymore? I feel like ever since we sort of implemented this new system, our innovation has just gone down.
Yeah, it's true. We don't podcast remotely anymore.
Right.
I don't podcast from the car. I don't podcast from the woods.
Yeah. It's almost as if, God, I wish there was just some type of system that would reward us according to our sort of unique product or service.
Yeah.
Unique ambitions.
Yeah.
I wish there was a system wherein I could come up with an idea, make other people do it for me, and then I reap all the financial rewards from it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like where this is going, people.
And perhaps gain enough fame and recognition to buy Twitter.
I like the way you think. I think that this is something that we could explore in this discussion here. That's right, folks. We are inventing a new economic system, but it's scary to live in an ever-changing world. You used to the way you live one day, and then the next forces outside of your control are threatening your way of life. And this was really the nightmare of awaking one day, realizing that the world that you thought was yours is completely out of your hands. This nightmare, this waking nightmare, was actually presented to us on screen in the movie we watched this week. We are very excited to finally be covering the cult classic, If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? The 1971 Christian propaganda film. This was formally recommended to us by one of our listeners, Jared. Shout out to Jared. He recommended this to us on a message on Patreon.
Thank you, comrade.
Yeah. And, but this was on our radar to some extent. I know that you were familiar with this series, Scott. You've seen this film before.
Yeah, and it's been recommended to me a couple times before, too. But yeah, I actually saw this film 16 or 17 years ago, thanks to the video store Out Obsession in Chicago.
Thank you, comrades. Where's this title from? Is it from some kind of Shakespeare shit or what? It's like a Smith song.
It does sound like it could be, Irish footmen, English horses. It does sound like it could be a Smiths or Morrissey song. I think that thanks to Wikipedia, I can figure out that the title actually paraphrases Jeremiah 12:5. The title of the film, which is the title of a sermon that Estus Pirkle wrote, this sermon was delivered and then published in, readable form and then adapted to film. It paraphrases the Bible verse Jeremiah 12:5. The verse goes like this: "If you have raced with men on foot and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses?" And the way that Estus Pirkle, who is the preacher whose words are the focus of the film, the way that Estus Pirkle deploys this phrase in the movie is basically to say, you know, if you think stuff is bad now, just wait, son.
He wasn't wrong.
And he was not wrong.
Some of his predictions were spot on, in fact.
Yeah, probably not in the way he would have thought.
Not for the reasons he's suggested.
Right.
But
he also uses the footmen horsemen metaphor to sort of say, like, you know, nowadays there might be individuals making sinful choices in the world, but in the near future there will be like entire, you know, entire coordinated forces deployed in order to execute this dark, you know.
Yeah, they're called the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control.
The new World
folks,
Health
you've got to remember
Organization.
this came out in 1971, so there hadn't been any wars yet or any kind
Right,
of fuckery by people in power.
We can talk a little bit about that later now.
Well, just a little bit of background before we're just so anxious to dive into the content of this film because it's really delightful, a delight to the senses and a feast to the eyes. But just a tiny bit of background more. This film is brought about in collaboration between the preacher, the Baptist minister, Estus Washington Pirkle, Estus W. Pirkle.
Such a good name.
Such a good name. Oh my God. And the director of this film was, God fucking damn it, I lost all
Ormand, Ron Ormand.
Yes, the director of this film was Ron Ormand. From what I can tell about him, he was an exploitation film director who became a Christian after surviving a plane crash in 1968.
Wow.
That seems to be his biography. He survived this very serious crash. He was hospitalized. And during his recovery, he seemed, what?
He became
that's
Christian
right.
After motorcycle accident.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that about Bob Dylan's story, but you're right. I mean, certainly there's no shortage of examples of people who've found God in times of crisis.
Yeah, I wish he would have found a vocal teacher. Instead, get this guy some singing lessons.
Honestly, ever since he went electric, like culture has just gone downhill. Like, you know, if acoustic guitars tire you, you know, what will electric guitars do? But, yeah, so this is a very interesting collaboration between someone who clearly knows the filmmaking craft, and not just any type of filmmaking craft, but, you know, specifically a more shocking, garish type of filmmaking, and a preacher who has a very specific and dark apocalyptic view of the future. These
Total
two forces.
buzzkill. He's a doomer if I've ever seen one.
He's a bit black-pilled, I will say. Estus Pirkle is a bit of a doomer and a bit black-pilled. Honestly, like, again, we're just itching to dive into this film. So what is it? Like, what is the essential premise of this film here?
So it's basically an hour-long sermon featuring dramatic dramatic enactments of what he's warning about, which is at the beginning, a voiceover states that these are depictions of things that have already happened in countries like Korea, China, Russia, Cuba, but they replace, you know, those nationalities with Americans to show how easily it could happen here.
Yeah.
Right. And so that we can relate to it, obviously.
Our potential near future.
And all of the dramatized reenactments are taken from actual events that have happened in Russia, Korea, China, and Cuba, where the communists have already taken over. The only difference is that we're using Americans to emphasize that the same thing can and will happen here if they take over.
Right there, it goes to show something that is sort of true about this film all the way through, which is that things are realer when they are happening to Americans, specifically white Americans.
Yeah, specifically white Christian Americans. as you see later in the film when the guy waxes nostalgic. Sorry. What's his name? Estus Fink?
Estus Pirkle. Yeah.
Estus Pirkle.
You're thinking of Barton Fink.
Yeah.
Go on.
As you'll see later in the film when Estus Pirkle... Fuck. God damn this
It's a
guy's
tongue
stupid
teaser.
name.
It's a tongue twister. It is.
As you can see later in the film when Estus Pirkle is waxing nostalgic about, Georgia's past, and then at the same time fear-mongering about communists coming and making slaves work in the fields.
Yeah.
And how that's something we don't want to end up doing.
Totally. Yeah,
Let's just say these slaves look a little different from the ones that in Georgia's past.
Yes, no, it's pretty shocking to see on screen. It's just like, this would be obvious to anyone who views the film, but it still is pretty mind blowing, like where the dissonance begins with the filmmakers, where as a scare tactic shows a scene that might be seen in any film about American slavery, except for the fact that the people doing it are white instead of black.
Yeah.
And it goes to show just like
And
how
the people holding the guns are in communist uniforms.
Yeah, also white people, but wearing communist uniforms. Yeah, and there's white people in the fields. But yeah, immediately you can see just how myopic the view of the filmmakers are, that this stuff is happening in all countries. I guess literally in Cuba, people are being rounded up in the streets and like executed with machine guns like constantly.
Yeah.
Like there's just blood flowing down the streets, but it's not really real because it's not happening here. And even the stuff that did happen here, to black slaves is like, well, that didn't really happen here either because it wasn't to us. So
Yeah.
right out the gate, they're fear-mongering. They're saying, this already happens and this film is completely true. But also they're saying this stuff is only real because it's going to happen to us one day.
Yeah, I guess we should specifically say this whole sermon is about a communist takeover of the United States.
Yes.
And how that will lead to Christianity being outlawed. And if you don't disavow Jesus Christ, then you will be executed in the street and your children will be executed right in front of you.
And they will literally come to your home and make you take a test that you immediately pass if you simply write, I am not a Christian and I don't like capitalism.
Yeah.
Sounds easy to me.
Well, the guy tried to do it and they said, well, if you believe those words, then you will shoot your mom right in front of us and give him a loaded gun, which, at that point, I think you would just shoot the guy who gave you the gun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Of course.
But instead he gives him the gun back and gets shot.
Yeah. Communism is the central theme of this film. Even more so, the film assumes that you listening are already a Christian, maybe not as devout of a Christian as you could be, maybe sometimes errant in your ways or a little loose with your faith or your devotion or your practice, but you're a Christian. And the real enemy in this film is communism. Now, I try to be a cultured person. I'm certainly not an expert in history or economics or anything like that. I know a bit about communism, but, we see this time and time again. We see communism as opposed to Christian values. And I guess like my question, I not that we're necessarily qualified to answer it, but my question is like, why? Like, why are those two things so opposed?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to point this out without sounding like 70-year-old hippie with a bunch of bumper stickers, but like a lot of Jesus's teachings were pretty socialist in nature.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. People like the illusion of freedom more than they like, the potential security of having a strong social safety net.
Yeah.
Right.
And the illusion of like an infinite ceiling for their wealth.
Yeah. And conflating like communism with totalitarianism.
Right.
That, and also, certainly the religion of Americanism is getting its wires crossed with Christianity in a lot of this stuff. Although, as we saw from other films recently, such as 2045 or 2025, The World Enslaved by a Virus. It's also white German people who are afraid of communism destroying, good Christians in their country. So it's not just Americans who may subscribe to this. But I think in the particular case of this film, capitalism is essential to the American religion. American Protestant Christianity is the state religion. Therefore, communism and like Satanism are kind of just like necessarily conflated because those two things are the opposites of the official state religion. So I can't help but think that has something to do with it myself. But I mean, this film is really like, this is the book of Revelations when it comes to thinking about communism. This is the book of Revelations of the Red Scare, is really fucking cool. I loved seeing like the piles of like good white Christian kids in the street, covered in dirt. Their blood like splatters like all across the gutter.
It was wild to see like the whole congregation just get gunned down in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. This is the bloodiest movie we've watched for the podcast by miles.
It was. And this is a testament to the filmmaking prowess of Ron Ormand. I can't help but think that his experience making, exploitation type films, things like that, it's cool to have someone making this type of scare tactic film actually understanding the medium of what makes a film alluring and titillating. Because it was just so exciting. Like it did that really delightful thing where it just, you want to see, your human imagination, you want to see the darkness unfold in front of you. Like, it scares and inspires you, but also you really want to see it happen. And If Footmen Tire You, this film really gave us everything. It brought the nightmare to life in a way that was like so deeply satisfying.
In a way that only the director of Outlaw Women, Lost Women, Untamed Mistress, Frontier Women, and Please Don't Touch Me could do.
Untamed Woman is actually about the whore of Babylon who was riding on the great beast of in Revelations. No, that's not true, but I wish it were. I'm assuming that those films were created in the pre-plane crash era before he came to Christ.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I
would imagine so. Just a tiny bit more background while I'm on the subject of Ron Ormand's filmography. This pair, Ron Ormand and Estus Pirkle, they would go on to make at least 2 more films. They did films called one's about heaven and one's about hell.
Burning Hell. The Burning Hell.
Yes. They made 2 films after this, The Burning Hell and The Believer's Heaven, which I personally have not seen. We definitely would like to see them soon, but from what I can tell based on description, they are Estus Pirkle's visions of hell and heaven, respectively.
Yeah, the Burning Hell is that's been in my queue for way too long and has been recommended a few times as well.
Let's do it. I want to see it at the very least. So we've got a little background on Ron Ormand and Estus Pirkle. We have sort of the big idea of this film, which is that, again, everything we see in it is basically true because it happens in China and Russia and places like that. Also that, communism is the enemy of Christianity. They will take over. So I think some things specifically I want to get started with are like, what are some of the coolest like shots and sort of exploitation filmmaking techniques that we see in this film? Because there was a couple things like in the film storytelling aspect of this that I really liked and like really made this set apart from other Christian films we've watched. The first one I wanted to point out was I loved how one of the main actions of this movie was like, so, we're seeing this sermon unfold. Like basically the whole film is this sermon. Estus Pirkle talking directly to the camera at us while simultaneously addressing a congregation. And at first, I don't even know when I'm watching, is this like being filmed live? Are these like an audience's live reactions, or are they all actors? I don't really know. But then there's like a dramatization, and there's this young woman who gets out of the car with her date, and it's clear that she is like a woman with loose morals. And she walks into the service late and sits down and is now a part of the congregation. And that like really blew my mind. Like it was just like a simple storytelling thing, but it was just like, wow, it was really cool how the movie like blended the idea of like authenticity and fiction, you know? Like it used that technique to like weave in and out of different realities. And I thought that was really neat technique.
Right before she goes into the church, when she's getting out of the car, her boyfriend drove. Her boyfriend says, "I'm a lover, not a Christian," when she asks if she's gonna go in.
So sick. Oh, this film was just like peppered with these amazing like one-liners like that. But any other like different like shots or moments specifically with regards to like the storytelling that were pretty effective in this?
It was a pretty unique structure in general that I thought worked pretty well. I mean, a lot of times it's seen as a weakness to over narrate, but when you're starting from a preacher point of view, it's kind of the rest of the movie is doing what the narration normally does for a movie. Like the narration is actually the baseline because the Estus Pirkle's at the center of it, and then the stuff that you normally think of the movie is really just like filling out his narration, his sermon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I loved the shot of that they kept using over and over was just like a really tight shot on the communist officer's face, and he was just like smiling and
yes. Yeah, that's a great classic
really cool. There's like
trick.
A cool like vignette around his face too. Looked very sinister.
Yeah.
Was there any like racial stuff in that? I couldn't quite tell. The communists were basically supposed to be white, right?
They were, but they were from Cuba.
Ah,
right,
sure.
right.
There's a part of there's an announcement that Cuba had taken over the United States, and very strange to see in a movie about a communist takeover where people are supposed to be terrified of. I mean, just in comparison to present day, like Southern Baptists being terrified of the idea of the president and the Speaker of the House being killed.
That's a great
and
point.
The governors of New York and California also being assassinated.
Yeah.
It was like used to make them scared of communism.
That's so true. I didn't even really think about that, but yeah, there was in this particular, manifestation of like Protestantism, like a respect for authority is a part of the religion. And
I mean, I guess the idea is like, hey, nobody's allowed to destroy America except for Americans.
That's true. Yeah.
Keep out. This is our country to ruin. And if you don't stop it, we'll ruin your country too.
And just in case, we'll ruin your country right now.
Yeah. Preemptively ruin your country.
I love that Cuba specifically was the country that
I know,
took
it's so
over the
funny.
United States.
I
mean, do you think that
strange.
was like literally just because like that way they could get away with like white actors, like maybe with like slightly darker skin tones to make it work? I mean, they would have to like get Chinese actors if like China took over the United States.
I think they were
don't
supposed to
know.
be like Russians invading
Russia
through
too, of course.
Cuba because they all had like really weird. I mean, but you couldn't place the accents of that anybody was trying to do because it was like a Southern person really badly trying to do a Russian accent.
Yeah. To me, it all came across like someone, like a random person trying to do a bad Cajun accent, even though I think it was, a Southern person doing a Russian accent.
I liked that Burt Reynolds knockoff guy they had.
Oh, that was cool. He was the guy teaching the children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Who was
scene.
like,
that's what I want to do.
Do you believe praying to God works? And like a bunch of kids raise their hands, and he's like, all right, well, I can give you a bunch of candy. Can you pray and get some candy? And then they don't get any candy from praying. And then he throws out all the candy.
Let's see if you're Jesus.
will bring you some candy now and produce a miracle. There is no candy. Your Jesus didn't bring us any candy. The reason why, your Jesus Christ can't do it.
Again, this film utilized some pretty unique storytelling techniques to get across its point of the communist takeover of the United States. But what are some of the ways they do it? These communists, it says in the film, they have been simply dying to take over the United States. There's many quotes peppered throughout the movie about how they are just so excited to get here, you know?
Yeah.
And they're going to do it. And they have a lot of techniques at their disposal. So a big one, of course, is re-education. We were just talking about that scene where, there's like literally a job where you can be a communist guy who like teaches kids the proper things. But what are some other like sort of re-education techniques that the communists are going to use?
Well, I guess they kidnap your children.
Yeah.
From like your front porch.
Yes.
And they'll kill you if they find out you're teaching your children about Christianity. But, you know, we mentioned the one where it was like going into each home and making them fill out a questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you've ever done or said since you were 5 is what they said the questionnaire consisted of.
That was very interesting. Yeah, it made it seem like it was going to be very in-depth, but then, as you said, it was only 2 questions, really.
Well, it's a lot easier if you answer those 2 questions correctly.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
If you just say, I am not a Christian and I am not a capitalist.
Right.
The questionnaire ends and this is why communism will never work. Because anybody can say that. But apparently it's a lot harder to say those things than you'd think.
If you just cross your fingers on your non-writing hand and keep them behind your back, though, as you write the stuff, you're good.
Life hack.
You will note that the state wants your history, your exact history, from the age of 5 until this very moment. Everything you have said and done. In particular, your religious beliefs and the amount of money you have made and given to the church.
The one thing about like you have to write down every thought since you were 5 or whatever, that reminded me of Scientology. That actually gave me like Scientology vibes specifically because of the way that they like endlessly grill you about like details in your life, and you try to like go back to like before your birth and like into your past lives, and they write everything down. Kind of gave me that vibe. But
what's your guys' earliest memory?
I actually have a pretty early memory. Just a moment, just a glimmer.
What is it?
I have a memory of being in the crib, and I remember it was early in the morning. I was jumping up and down in the crib, and I pee in the crib. And my grandparents, I remember that my mom and dad were away, and my grandparents were babysitting me.
Yeah.
And they came in to take care of me after I did that.
Whoa.
That's my earliest memory. That's all I remember. But I must have been very young. I was in the crib. You know?
Yeah.
What's yours?
Sitting down at Scott's to watch this movie.
It's all a blur. You've been reborn. Well, the thing is, like,
you've been re-educated.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your earliest memory, Scott?
Being at a friend's house, but they were more my parents' friends, and I was like 2, and playing with some E.T. doll that I found, like a little action figure, I guess, like a little wind up E.T. I don't know why that's the memory, but
Phil Phillips
kind of tracks.
Phil Phillips said that E.T. promoted like homosexuality or something.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, right. Jeez. Actually, glad you brought up Phil Phillips though too, because they do mention that cartoons are poisoning our youth.
Right.
Yeah.
So, not only is there an effort to, sort of re-educate kids and people, along more communist lines, Estus Pirkle also warns of the many other effects in society that are contributing to moral decay. One of these, of course, is media. It's media.
says this media production.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always really baffled by the confusion between like capitalism good and money bad, because like they definitely did one of those in this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like, you know, any type of show or anything they would have a problem with is like ultimately fueled by capitalism, unless it's like the rare thing where a filmmaker's been doing something long enough that a network or studio lets them do basically what they want.
Right.
It was weird when they would like tie capitalism to Christianity, because it seems like, because like also his whole thing was, you know, when my father was a kid in the 1900s in Georgia, they would just run around outside with their without shoes on, and they were totally happy.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't need all this fancy TV. He's like advocating for some Walden ass shit.
Yeah.
Right.
But
while your underpaid labor does all the work for you.
Exactly.
Right. But no, I found that very interesting. It was when his like point of focus kind of slipped, because yeah, on one hand it was like, okay, communists are infiltrating, but then completely removed from that, it was like, well, also television is like taking people's attentions away from the Bible. And then like even deeper than that, it was like, well, we used to have simpler lifestyles. We used to appreciate the simpler things. And it's like, I don't really understand where that sort of fit into his master thesis. I mean, I guess maybe if people were stronger in their belief, then they would be, you know, firmer of heart, and they, you know, wouldn't give in to communist brainwashing or something. But I don't know. It really just seemed like he shoehorned that one in there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the simple things are good, but dancing is just as wrong as it's always been.
Dancing is just as wrong as it's always been. You say, what's wrong with it? It's the front door to adultery. The thing that started on the dance floor is expected to be finished in a parked car or a motel somewhere.
You know, for all the talk of like re-education in this film, there's a lot of information provided in the film about like what young people should or should not be doing, you know?
Yeah.
This film was a call to young people, like just as much as it was like a warning against communism. But I found the dancing thing to be like particularly archaic, I guess. In the film, it even acknowledged like time is changing. Dancing, they say it's the front door to adultery. They also talk about drive-in theaters.
They're adding so many more things to make our children go astray. Today, we have the drive-in theater. Have you considered what goes on down there? It's nothing more than a spawning house for sex.
Yeah.
Drive-in theaters are spawning homes for sex.
And, you know, we drive on the parkway and we park on the driveway.
They don't call them park-in theaters. Yeah, wait, what's the point? You're not even driving when you watch the film.
Yeah, why is it called a driving theater?
Well,
also his story about the girl with the mini skirt
oh yeah,
who
very
stood
right.
up and said she was a Christian and everyone catcalled her.
Not long ago, I stood up to preach in a certain congregation. A young lady stood up to sing, and she got catcalls from all over the house. You know why? She was dressed in a miniskirt 12 inches above her knees.
And he was like, but how can this girl call herself a Christian when she's wearing a mini skirt? And it's like, dude, what about the fucking congregation that started catcalling her in church?
Very strange. That was a bizarre story. That actually that whole segment, because I remember now he kept saying like a lot of strange young people are coming to church nowadays.
Yeah.
Which was a very odd.
It's a weird dismissal of like
allowed.
Potential growth of a church.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like, I understand and on some level respect that, you know, Estus Pirkle wanted to keep, you know, he wanted to hold to traditions. He you know, he was conservative in the sense of the word. He didn't want change. He didn't want like things to loosen up and be more permissive in his church. But it is pretty shocking to see someone basically like in so many words, like reject any idea of growth or inviting new people into a church. Like
based on their appearance.
Yeah, based on their appearance.
It's like, brother,
based on,
I know a guy, I have a friend you might think looks pretty weird. He's got long hair. His initials are JC, and he's from Bethlehem. You might have called him a hippie if you saw him on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not white, so you wouldn't have cast him in your movie.
That's true. He would not be in this movie.
And, well, you know, also, you know, he was talking about how preachers nowadays will marry someone if it's their second marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. I didn't realize that would be controversial at the time.
Mm-hmm.
All this from a guy who's telling you to come at the very end of his sermon.
Will you get up and come to the altar? This could be the most important decision of your lifetime. Will you come? Will you come?
Yes. Begging you to hands-free ejaculate.
Is it ASMR? Will you come? Will you come? Will you come?
A little JOY. To you know, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. You know. One thing I want to go back to, make sure we hammer down, is this idea of children being taken away from the parents and raised by the state, because that is not only very central to this film, that's also a theme we hear quite a bit about and we've seen before. I would want to point out that like a more recent example of this is the film Remember, which is directed by the Lamamans.
Yep.
I'm blanking on the two guys' first names, but they are the Lamamans.
Lenny and Larry, I think.
Greg and Greg.
But yeah, the Lamamans film, that was another film that sort of went on this like, you know, New World Order, like totalitarian overreach into the private lives of citizens. And Remember, they talked, you know, they had these like homes, like state homes for kids.
Yeah, they immediately take your kids at birth.
Mm-hmm. And they're completely discouraged from any kind of play that mimics the nuclear family.
Right.
You know, like the girls were covertly playing with like dolls. Like they weren't allowed to do that because it was like encouraging the instinct to motherhood.
Yeah, they're like pretending a ball was a baby.
Yeah. So dope. And yeah, meanwhile, everyone in Remember had to take these like drugs that would help them like forget the painful moments in their life where the government overreached. And this was sort of a heavy-handed metaphor for, you know, us just sort of dismissing.
My most painful memories are of when the healthcare exchange opened.
My most painful memories are that delicious bat soup I enjoyed right before the world all collapsed. The last big trip I had. But yeah, you know, this idea that the Christian, you know, a particular type of conspiratorial minded idea of a new world order, which has these a lot of the different ways these people tell it have the same elements. And children being raised by the state, ripped away from their parents, the nuclear family being destroyed. This is a recurring motif.
It's crazy because like kids raised under capitalism are so well adjusted and mentally stable and treated so kindly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can definitely afford food and stuff when they go to school.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, no judgment on the nuclear family for me personally. I think it's a good thing, although it's also failed like 50% of the people I've ever met. But, you know, it worked pretty well for me, so I like it. But all the same, I agree. It's not like capitalism has any child's.
Yeah, it's hard to see how it could be much
in mind.
worse.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, but that's very important. I mean, obviously then there's not a lot about it in this film, but you know, the mark of the beast is of course a very typical Christian New World Order, you know, a trademark of the New World Order. I also want to bring up the musical 20 Minutes to Go, which we watched, I want to say last year with our friend Woodrow.
Yeah.
That's another like, Christian New World Order type film from a much different perspective as this, from a more like media savvy. Well, this was media savvy in its own way, but a more, a younger cult perspective.
I thought that one was smart to end in heaven, though. Like a lot of these other ones just end in this horrible, like bleak manner. It feels like the point is to be like, let's hurry up and get this rapture here.
Well, yes. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, the moral of If Footmen Tire You is basically that death is better than this. Like the whole film is just being like, well, you should just say that you believe in Jesus so they behead you. Yeah. Because that's better than living in the reality that we're living
Better get
in.
ready to be martyred because it's going to get worse around here.
But that's such a good point, Scott. It's not even that they really showed the martyring as like being, they really didn't give you any incentive to be martyred other than the fact that like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It was
like it's the right thing. It's the right thing to do.
But you're right. There wasn't even like a reward for it. I mean, not to sound like a millennial who wants a participation trophy or anything, but I don't really understand the incentive here. Actually, Scott, you and I talked about this a little bit in the Easter episode, like about the Jehovah's Witnesses versus the Mormons and how the Mormons are more like sensual and about like the reward that's going to come for you.
Yeah.
Whereas the Jehovah's Witnesses are like, you might not even get to heaven because it might be full, but this is the right thing to do. So you're going to do it. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you don't like it. You're going to eat your vegetables, son. And that was what this film was like. It was like, well, you should eat your vegetables, even though when you eat your vegetables, like a man from Cuba is literally going to cut your head off with a scimitar. But you're still going to do it because it's better than communism.
And you know what? Having your head cut off, a lot better than some of the other things that could have happened based on this movie.
Yeah.
Like when they show the guy stabbing the kid in the ears.
He had pencils in his ears.
Describe that.
He was
please.
like bleeding out of every orifice. Pencils in his ears and puking up cum or something.
Like he is actually vomiting, and it sounds like there is a grown man just like going over it.
It's crazy. And he was like a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah, and in that scene, they were stabbing out his eardrums because he had heard the word of the Lord with bamboo sticks.
Specifically bamboo
sticks.
They
love the bamboo sticks thing is like, that's that classic.
It's like Vietnam
right,
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it evokes a sort of...
Well, I don't know what bamboo is, but keep it away from my ears.
And then just as bad as having a group of children pull a guy up who's like hogtied basically over pitchforks, and then a communist laughing maniacally, having the time of his life, like has them drop him on the pitchfork and then heave him up again and then drop him on the pitchfork.
Here is a documented incident of sheer horror at its worst. The man who's about to be killed did not break the law. His only crime was being a Christian. His own immediate family were forced to participate.
All right, drop him. I said drop him.
They do it at least 3 times.
Yeah. I haven't seen stuff this bad since Abu Ghraib, since the famed communist takeover of Abu Ghraib.
But it's true. The torments of communism are going to be horrible, but they're nothing compared to hell. You think you've seen hell, and you will essentially see hell on earth, but it's actually nothing compared to what might await you in hell. So the polite thing to do, the right thing to do is when they ask you if you believe in Jesus, as the young boy does, and probably the funniest scene of the whole thing, the young boy says that he believes that Jesus saved him, and the communist goes, "You stupid little fool," and beheads him with a sword, and his actual severed head
they
goes
show
rolling
him
down the
pulling
hill.
his head off and then throwing it into a yard, tumbling away.
Cool.
They look great.
One day you died for me, now I'm willing to die for you.
Why, you stupid little fool.
I thought the least scary thing, and most of it was scary. There were scary things.
Totally.
The least scary thing was talking about having people rounded up and having to sit on benches for 17 hours, hearing the same thing again and again. It was like, that's just a day of background acting via central casting.
That's going to church, bro.
I will say the most depressing thing in this movie was him saying that the communist takeover will result in Americans having to work 365 days of the year with only 2 days of vacation for minimum wage.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
No time to see their families or do anything fun.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I am going to probably put in this clip, but I wrote down, it said, gone is our easygoing life of working 40 hours per week.
You can say that again.
Yep.
And unless we have some rapid changes in our country, our easygoing life of 40 hours a week workload and 2 or 3 weeks of paid vacation a year will soon be over. We, too, will be on the same schedule of every communist nation on earth. You will be at work by 5 o'clock in the morning. You'll work until 8 o'clock at night. You'll be forced to work under armed guards continually. You won't work 5 days a week. You won't work 6 days a week. Instead, you'll work 7 days a week, 363 days out of the year. You'll only have 2 days a year off. Those 2 days will be used to praise the communist takeover.
Well, say what you will about that, but at least here we get our choice of having, each of our 3 jobs. We can choose which one to do. Yeah.
Listen, I can make my own hours, okay? I'm free. I can choose what kind of socks I wear while I'm standing up all day.
You can choose to either, take your break between 3 to 5 in the afternoon or like 2 to 5 in the morning.
That's beautiful. And that's the type of thing you wouldn't get in communist North Korea,
communist
for instance.
Georgia.
What is the goal of the communists? What do they want? They're just sadistic in this. That's what I find very interesting, is like the purpose of these people. It's just pure sadism, I suppose. Like they want work to be done, but there's no need to accomplish. Like they're not even trying to accomplish anything like economically.
Right.
It's just they want to just like mass torture everyone in the world.
To what end? This wouldn't work. It's just.
Are you saying communism wouldn't work? It's better in theory than in practice,
because it's just torturing people for fun, and that gets old after a while.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, I feel like I could be a
people
communist
get bored
guard
and go into something new.
Right. I feel like I could be a communist guard for like a week and a half, and then I would be like, "This is all there is."
I could be a comrade teacher, just throwing candy to kids.
That's what I want to do. I kind of want to be the guy who tells the kids to drop their dad onto the pitchforks, which is basically a metaphor for cancel culture, honestly.
Oh my God, children will be forced to cancel their own fathers.
Bring out the pitchforks. Yeah.
But what from this movie has come true? Like what actually seems like kind of accurate nowadays? There's one thing I wanted to point out.
Because of capitalism or because of communism?
Either. I mean, that's a good point.
Because a lot of these things have come true because of capitalism.
Because of capitalism, yes. We should talk about those specifically. One thing that not exactly this like came true in the sense that the movie purported, but one thing I found was pretty eerie was just this quick scene that was tucked in there of secular like sex education in schools.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah. Where the vaguely queer coded teacher, although I don't know, everyone in the 70s looked like that. So the vaguely queer coded teacher said like,
boys and girls, as I have discussed with you many times before, I personally believe that premarital sex is necessary. And now we will go on to discuss the 7 erotic zones of passion in every woman. The first one is...
and then it cuts.
Wish they would have taught us that in high school.
Well, that's what they're trying to do now, and that's what like I found that just kind of interesting to watch, like literally in like this week's political landscape, because like that's obviously sort of what's there's legislation in Florida and similar legislation popping up in other states. Basically
against the erogenous zones.
Yeah, you're no longer
allowed to touch the erogenous zones. Those are my favorite zones.
No, you can pick one.
No, they're trying to make it the law that you can teach how to have really good sex as a teen.
Right.
You can only teach bad sex in high school.
But, you know, even not so much in the law. I mean, I know you guys aren't as like online as I am, but like online recently, there's been a lot of right-wing discourse, like basically equating like all LGBT people as people are just really throwing around the term groomer nowadays. And basically just sort of implying that like anyone who is out as gay, specifically if what they do interfaces with kids at all, they're calling them groomers. And
I've never met a straight pedophile before.
Yeah, none of those around.
But there's been a lot of like these very specific online talking points. Like, you know, people are finding scare tactics from these like specific places. Like there's some summer camp program that I don't fully know the facts of. I'm literally just repeating like the right-wing talking point of that. Apparently there's this like sexy summer camp program in Kentucky that was like teaching kids about masturbation and stuff like that. And there's just a big fear right now, basically, that like young gay like liberals that are now in schools like are teaching kids, you know, how to be trans and like about non-binary identities and about masturbation and stuff like that. And that's coming to pass like right now. And I found that to be like pretty interesting to see that.
I just think it's so much safer to learn this stuff just randomly, haphazardly coming across it on the internet, seeing terrifying lo-fi videos of people choking other people as they, you know, imagine what you want.
Right. Yeah. And I do, believe me, I do. Yeah, I don't know. And we've talked about this a little on the show. You know, we don't maybe have to open the whole conversation. I don't know what the best way is to teach kids about sex. I don't know if there is a good way. But you're right. I mean, I guess they are going to find out on their own, and their materials are going to be. I'm literally just scrolling through Twitter and I'm forced to see like a picture of someone getting fisted that like I didn't follow. You know,
honestly,
thanks, Elon.
Like, I've been Scooter McRae's other movie After Shatter Dead is 16 Tongues.
Oh, I
and
have
in
to see that.
That movie, you have to pay to turn off the porn.
What?
And there's just porn everywhere.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And like when I try to get my bootleg basketball streams, a lot of the time I'll just be like completely out of nowhere. It's like a browser's like just like very large man is like penetrating a much smaller woman. And you're like,
dude,
Jesus Christ.
I don't even get to watch the game. I get so wrapped up in that stuff.
But it's like you can't just like throw that in my face. Like,
yeah,
no, it's crazy. Yeah, I remember my mom telling me an anecdote where she complained to my late father about the like the fact that she would just get a text message that was just like a picture of a woman's vagina, and he would just be like, "Oh yeah, that happens. You know, I get those sometimes." And she was like, "What?" You know, like, I mean, it does happen. Like she's not wrong. He's not wrong. But it was like she recently got exposed to the fact that was just like a reality of being online, and she found it like crazy that he had already become like desensitized to that. Whereas, I mean, I don't think she'd fully understood that, like, you know, her kids and anyone our age, which is like, you know, pretty old compared to like the young kids. Even we, like somewhat older people, are completely desensitized to hardcore pornography. It's just, as you said, it's just like, sometimes I'll literally be like in line waiting for food, looking at my phone, and I scroll through just like, like a man's like ass getting eaten or whatever. And I'm like, oh Christ. If footmen tire you, you know, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. What else in this movie has come to pass?
You know, the stuff about the 40-hour work week.
Yeah. You can't stop working now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, like, where they were like, "Oh yeah, your kids are gonna be in school, and there's gonna be communist flags everywhere, and they're gonna have to like vow or make a vow to like communism. Like, aren't they just like trying to do that with fucking like critical race theory and stuff? Just like get rid of anything that's critical of the United States in classrooms.
Of our insanely sordid past.
Yeah, like that's it's crazy. I mean, you wonder how much of that dissonance is like intentional or not, but I mean, propaganda is just what you don't agree with, and education is what you do agree with. You know, it's like
right.
Pretty amazing how.
Wait, is now the time to pitch my dystopian future Christian movie?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the near future. All religion has been outlawed except one. Christianity, evangelical Christianity.
Whoa. Oh boy.
So if you're not a Christian, you have to say that you believe in God, or else you'll go to like a camp. So only the real Christians have to like really put themselves on the line for other religions and like other people who don't believe in God to like protect them.
That's good. Yeah. Now that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else from this movie that's ripped from the headlines? I mean, you know, China is, you know, we're obsessed with China. If this movie were made today, China would be the one taking over, because that actually seems like, you know, I mean, it's the most plausible of all the countries they mentioned.
You don't think Russia now, though? I guess it depends who's making the
neither
movie.
of those countries are even communist anymore.
Well, that's
the grand irony of it.
With talking about communism, because you like if you don't explain what communism is, because you're just all you're saying is like you hate totalitarianism, like fucking of course. Like,
which it would be funny to see these. I mean, you know, who knows? But I don't want to like put thoughts onto people who are long dead by the looks of this movie, but like. It would be funny to see this like made today and what like Russia would be seen as, because that's like a largely Christian nation now.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, movies recently, even some that we've watched. What was the movie where they were in Russia?
Born American.
Yes, but it's the one with the kid. The kid who has the dream where the saint with his name comes to him. Not
Stephen's faith.
Yeah. Stephen's test of faith or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
There was a Russia story in there, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
It was like Christianity, like Christians being rounded up in Russia.
Yeah. Same as this, basically.
Yeah.
But like really brief and no blood, sadly.
Yeah. Well.
Mad props to all the blood in this movie.
All the piles of dead kids. Incredible.
The closest we ever got to something like this was there was that, I think it was the silent movie we watched, and it ended with like the missionaries in another country being executed.
Yeah. And they throw the Bible into the fire and it doesn't burn.
Yeah.
The good book.
Asbestos.
The good book.
Got to get the asbestos edition.
Yeah, the Estus Pirkle asbestos edition.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. You know, in talking, like that's what's so funny about talking about this film. If we get into the concepts of the movie, it like distracts from the fact that this movie was just like a glittering images of gore.
Yeah.
And like
they had a lot of fun making this movie.
Oh, this movie's fun as hell.
They fucking shoved pencils in a kid's ear and made him puke on camera.
So dope.
And dropped a fucking hillbilly on a bunch of pitchforks.
They made his kids do it.
Yeah. They had too much fun making this.
They really did. They really did.
I assume this is just all a real congregation that got paid nothing to do this and probably brought the food for all the crew.
I feel like the guy, what's his name? The director?
Ron Ormand?
Yeah.
I feel like he's sort of like that George Romero movie where he got funding for it from the church.
Yeah.
But then they like hated the movie he made.
Right.
I feel like that's something similar going on here. Although, you know, the plane accident story was pretty convincing that he is an actual Christian. But part of me thinks like, oh, if I make this movie under the guise of being like Christianity versus communism. I can do the most insane shit I've ever wanted in a movie.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's really interesting to me how
it was just torture porn.
Because this movie is a hard R. Like if you have to rate this, it's a hard R.
Yeah,
for sure. But it's interesting how it's like under the guise of like a Christian message. It's fine.
Should a child get decapitated?
Yeah. So dope.
Man, so awesome.
Very dope. But the congregation seemed sincerely with it. There was that quick part at the end where like he was like, God may not come to America and save us. Like he might go to a nation where they do believe in God, like Indonesia. And then it showed some old people in the crowd like nodding.
Oh yeah, that got brought up a couple times about God not staying in America if we don't get our shit together.
Yeah, what the fuck, dude? He can be in two places at once, right?
Yeah, God's everywhere.
That was what was interesting about this movie.
God created the earth, not just America first.
Yeah.
Right. No, God is one guy in this film.
Yeah, who's hanging out. And judges us all by the acts of a few.
Yeah, that's not very fair. But you know what else isn't fair? Communism.
That's true.
Communism led by people who don't believe in communism.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. In capitalism, anyone can do what they want.
Yeah.
You have the freedom to try and fail as many times as you'd like.
Yeah. If you work hard.
And, oftentimes, failing is just being born.
Mm-hmm.
Or in trying and failing means dying destitute. And all your debts are passed on to your whoever's left alive.
But let me tell you, you could respawn as, a king. Well, not a king.
In heaven, maybe.
Yeah.
You don't respawn in Christianity.
No, not. Here's the thing. I've been playing so many violent video games. They've kind of warped my perception.
Yeah, you need to watch something more tame, like If Footmen Tire You.
What will horses do? Yeah, quite the film. If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? We are excited to cover a film like this that kind of spans across multiple of our interests, not just in Christian film, religious themes, propaganda filmmaking, but also goes into exploitation, cult classics. It's two types of outsider cinema banging against each other and producing like a one-of-a-kind product. That aspect does remind me of like 20 Minutes to Go, or other kinds of like, cult propagandist type stuff, just because of that unique nature it occupies. But still, If Footmen Tire You had a mind of its own. And I'm glad we got to talk about it, but I think it's now time to give it the official Boys Bible Study rating. What do you say, boys? Any concrete thoughts on this one?
This one had it all. It had a good political message, had a good religious message, extreme violence, sex, the percolator, Estus Pirkle. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 Cuban cigars.
Ooh.
Also, Cuba, interestingly enough, for being a horrific communist dystopia, is one of the leading cancer researchers in the world. Huh. And America is not allowed to access any of that information because of the embargo that we've had on Cuba.
Cool.
That's so amazing.
I also believe they have the highest ratio of doctors per capita too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have The Last Picture Show, The Last Movie, Ken Russell's The Devils, Duel, THX 1138, Fists of Fury, Harold and Maude, Shaft. All of these movies came out in 1971.
Damn, that's a good year.
But the most visionary was If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? And because of that incredible feat, I give this candy for everybody.
Yay! I hate Jesus.
You don't have to say that, Julian. I'll just give you candy.
Bleep that out. Elon, Let me edit the post.
Well, you know, at first when you were reading that list, I thought you were going to make an argument that this film was all of those combined, which to an extent I could see that for some of what you said, but no, I didn't realize those were all 71. What a year.
Yeah.
Good God. As for me, If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? By the way, it's also really funny recording. Anytime any of us has to refer to the title, we always look down at whatever screen or piece of paper we're
hear
holding.
Me flipping a page back.
Yes. But yeah, absolute banger of a film. It had me digging my heels into a picture of Jesus on the ground. You know, because
hey, Kyrie did that to the Boston mascot, and look what happened to him.
Well, you know what? I want to play for the winning team, and this film made me realize that you know, communism has what it takes to go all the way. So I appreciate the fine work of Estus Pirkle, and I'm gonna have to give this film the same rating I would give to every other film. Which is that it is a perfect film because it wouldn't be fair otherwise. And I believe in an equal allotment of points for films. We at Boys Bible Study, thank you.
The irony of like communism doesn't lend itself to innovation while fucking these shitheads eat up every fucking superhero movie that comes out that's made at the exact same time with the exact same actors, with the exact same jokes.
Look at this movie that communism inspired them to make.
Yeah. Seriously.
Exactly.
Dude, you know what movie fucking this fucking Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie about Uber is going to kill me.
What is
I hate seeing the ads every time I see the fucking billboards. Good for you. Like, close your eyes when you're walking around. It's like, don't open your eyes. Don't open your eyes for like a year and a half. This fucking movie is going to be the end of me. I don't even know if it's a movie or a TV show, but like I see the ads for it all the time. I had to watch this horrible ad where it was Joseph being like, you know, it's a really cutthroat world in the tech industry, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, God.
What's it about?
It's about the founder of Uber and how he like was a bad boy who like created a new app.
Oh.
It's like the social network
paid for
about Uber. Dude, I have no idea.
Paid for by Uber.
It's insane. You know, you think you've met the final boss of like culture, and then something new comes along, and you're just like,
it's the guy who yelled at the Uber driver, right?
What?
You don't remember that? One of the like founder or one of the like heads of Uber was in an Uber and he got into a fight with the Uber driver.
Oh, I kind of vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it was like 7 years ago or something.
Yeah, I hope that happens in the movie. But I just saw little like trailer type clips, but there's one of like Joseph Gordon-Levitt with his like arms around like two models, like drunkenly like walking someplace, and I'm like, oh wow, Uber is so cool, you guys. God, movies are horrible. I never want to see another one as long as I live.
Wait, is this
next week?
It is a show. Is this going to be one of those things where the Uber show comes out on Netflix and then Hulu gets the Lyft one?
Oh,
dude, I wouldn't put it past these fuckers. Like,
give me the sidecar show.
That's
what people want.
I want to see that. Actually, that would be so lit. Well, on behalf of the Boys Bible Study, thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time with us, please go to boysbiblestudy.com. There's links there to subscribe to any of your favorite podcasting depots. So please go there. Also, if you really like what we do and you want to support, please check out patreon.com/boysbiblestudy. Your subscription of $5 per month or more gets you access to bonus episodes. That means you'll get content from us every week as opposed to every other. So if you want all of your Sunday mornings to have a new Boys Bible Study episode, you know how to support us. Special shout outs to our patron saints, the patrons at the $20 tier, who get a shout out in every episode. We thank you very much. Nicole, Marissa, Jeff, Jane, Kara, Alexandria, and boys, we're so excited to welcome a new saint to the canon.
Hot damn.
That's right. We are canonizing officially Rhett. Thank you so much for your generous donation.
Comrade
Rhett's. you would be granted equal footing among all of us in the Boys Bible Study regime. Our outro music is "Oh My God" by Mary. From all of us here at Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, we would like to say, peace be with you.
And also with you, you stupid little fool.
In communist Russia, peace is with you.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day you take me high with your love, and I'd rather than be true. I need you to wash away my sin. Open back to let you give me my sin, and I give you all I got. Non-stop, oh my God, yours is a God.
Will you come?